I was 100% in it from birth until 4+ years ago. Excommunication is a very barbaric ritual. You're going down a rabbit hole, as we say. You think you resolve one thing, but you find another and another. The fact that you're doing this documentary and the fact that you're talking to me, you're on kind of loose ground already. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this. It has to be true. Like, it better be true.
How do you take something out that was almost like an operating system?
What the church does is it creates a roadmap for you. I didn't tell my wife. I was scared to tell her. What's paramount is to protect the image of the church. 1 hour a day, LDS students would cross the street.
By design, the church set this up as
Right.
close as they could to the school.
There's going to be some members that will be upset with me saying that, but if there's nothing to hide, why not share?
Did you ever come to this temple?
Yeah, this was quote unquote my temple growing up.
So what was it like growing up in the church?
It was wonderful. I grew up in a congregation, what we call a ward, that was super tight-knit. Back then in Mesa, there was tons of LDS, and our congregation was so concentrated where it only consisted of 4 residential streets. So basically, almost every single home in that neighborhood was LDS. When you're 8 years old, the church influences you to decide to become a member. But as an adult, an 8-year-old doesn't have the maturity to make such a decision, nor do you realize what kind of decision you're making. A lot of it is like you're seeing your older siblings or your friends who are members in your ward all get baptized.
Okay.
And so like, that sounds cool. I want to do that.
Sure.
And then with Mormonism, there's always a progression. There's always the next thing. So the church gives you roles early on in life, especially for boys. When I was young, the expectation was to go on a mission when you're 19 years old. You spend 2 years doing that. Roadmap after that is then you get married. And this is the place you get married, is a temple. What the church does is it creates a roadmap for you. It's all planned out. So
you did all those steps. You
did all those steps.
You did your mission.
Yep,
You came back, got married.
Got married. So I can't help but say I say the word we sometimes, but I served in Taiwan. So I lived in Taiwan for 2 years. Learned Chinese.
Oh wow!
Lots of challenges, but I love the experience. And years after that, it's these steps right here. Perfect timing in our walk here.
Yeah.
Where this is the entrance to the temple. Traditionally at this temple is family gathers right here. And so when the ceremony is done, the bride and groom comes out those gold doors, and it's a big celebration. Doing these things leads to happiness, and the goal of it all is to return to our Father in heaven in the celestial kingdom, which is another way of saying like the top level of heaven. You must do all those things, from being baptized, doing the rituals in the temple, then being married in the temple, and living a good, clean life and doing all the things.
Okay.
Lots of work your entire life.
Sure.
And your hope is that you qualify to dwell with your Father in heaven, or God. I know that couple. Funny. You just, in Mormonism, and I say that in a loving way, everyone knows everyone. It's been 4 years since we left the church. Time heals wounds, and so it used to be very raw and just painful. I want to emphasize that it's a painful experience, leaving such what it looks like a happy, joyful, very fulfilling life.
And I wanted to get the left LDS story because a lot of people reached out to me.
Okay.
A lot. And they said, hey, look, if you're going to do an LDS series, a lot of people have left. You really need to get that perspective. So fair enough. I want to get that perspective. But I've also noticed there's no one story for left
Yes.
LDS.
Absolutely.
I've heard everything from burn it all down
Right.
to, yeah, I left and I still hang out with all my Mormon friends and family and everything's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the two extremes.
And everything in between.
And everything in between.
Right. I can't emphasize this enough. I was 100% in it from birth until, 4+ years ago. When you feel that you have lost something, it's devastating and it's painful, and there's all the emotions are valid. Anger, resentment, sadness. And for those who left the church who feel that, I respect it. Oftentimes, you lose friend associations. Oftentimes, your family will treat you differently. And I don't think Mormons do it overtly or on purpose, but it's kind of how they're been indoctrinated. The church leaders pin us as others. Like President Nelson, I think it was almost a year ago in General Conference, called people like me a lazy learner. That's not very nice, right? Mm-hmm. And then just recently in conference, the most recent conference, he likened a person like myself as do not take advice from those who don't believe. The people who leave, they quickly realize that the love that they had from their parents or their siblings was conditional. The condition of love and being family was being a full, worthy, prosperous member of the church. And unfortunately, some families feel that they lost their son or daughter forever because that's what the doctrine teaches. And so there's this irreparable thing where they lost you. And the church will kind of start emphasize that, like, you need to move on. And we have pity for those who leave. And again, there's going to be some members that will be upset with me saying that, but that's the truth. And that's from the people that I've associated with who left. It's happened to some of them. Again, not all, but to some of them. And these criticisms that are real and true, mm-hmm. that members today hear, they take personal offense to it. Like, they think it's a personal attack on them.
Okay.
And this message that we have is to the system, to the church, to the top leaders. This is my high school. This is Mesa High. This structure here I've literally never seen before. It's brand new. So there are constant improvements. Majority of my friendships were LDS kids. I had many that weren't, but that's just kind of how you're taught. You stay with those who have the same values. This is the seminary building. So most schools in Arizona and Utah, Idaho, I'm guessing for sure, 1 hour a day, LDS students would cross the street and receive spiritual education or instruction.
During the school day?
During the school day.
The school was okay with that?
Yeah, they called it release time. You sign a little waiver that you can leave campus to go to seminary.
So obviously by design, the church set this up as close as they could to the school.
Yeah, in smaller towns where there's not that many high school kids, the trade-off is kids will go to a local church house that's nearby, or even go to a member's home if it's a really small group. There's an expectation that you graduate from seminary. And so that's the expectation of a young LDS person. You go to class, they have tests, but I thought they were easy because you know the material really. And you do all the things and you go to a graduation ceremony and you get a certificate. And here's the thing, that everything that I'm talking about, from the temple work to going to seminary, is by design. Like, the church's emphasis on kids is so important that from birth till they become adults, they want them to stay. They want, and I'm gonna use this word, but it's indoctrinate. Indoctrinate the kids at a young age, all the way through high school, so that they will be members for life. And it's a important mission of the church, because there's a lot of members leaving, and this is the next generation, and they have to pass that baton to them or to somebody. So they're putting all their eggs in that basket, working really hard to keep them in.
These are a jumping cactus?
Yeah, that one is, I believe. People who are not from Arizona, like if they go hiking and they just like slip and they run against it, they'll break off and like that section will stick on your arm and it ruins your day, you know what I mean?
Wow, what a place. So Todd, the time has finally come. The big question, why'd you leave? Why does one leave at the age of, say, 42, 43 is when you left?
Yep, about that. So I think everyone's different in their journey, but for me, it came out to be truth claims. So growing up, you're taught a certain narrative of how church history, how it was, and I learned later in life that the story was very, very different, and then with that, what became very problematic with how things really were, how the church came to be. And it's starting with Joseph Smith and his first vision, as the church calls it, where he was visited by God the Father and Son Jesus Christ. We were told a certain story or narrative of that, but in reality, it was very different. And then things like the Book of Mormon, how the Book of Mormon came to be. The church taught that an ancient prophet named Moroni buried the plates in upstate New York, near where Joseph Smith was raised. Book of Mormon stories occurred somewhere in South America or Central America, and he traveled thousands of miles with super heavy plates to New York. There's that, and then the way that the Book of Mormon was translated was very interesting. We were told as members that he was given what's called a Urim and Thummim, and the way that it was depicted in like church art was compared him to spectacles or glasses. But the reality was, or is, that he, Joseph Smith, used a rock in a hat to translate the Book of Mormon. So literally, he would put a stone in a hat, like an Abraham Lincoln type hat, and stick his head in the hat, and words would appear on the stone of what the golden plates would say.
Okay.
Oftentimes, the plates weren't even in the room where Joseph and his scribe was translating. So then you ask the question, well, why were the plates even needed after all, if he actually didn't use them?
Okay.
So there's lots of different problematic things about how that Book of Mormon was translated.
Okay.
And then you ask the question, well, where are those plates today? Can we examine them, you know?
Uh-huh.
But the story is that when Joseph Smith was done, the angel took them back to heaven, I guess. So we don't have a way to validate or verify.
That would have been in like 1840 something?
I used to know this, but I've been out for 4 years. But I think this was in the 1820s. I think the Book of Mormon came out prior to the church being established, which was in 1830.
Okay.
So in the late 1820s is when the Book of Mormon was published. To kind of put context is like I was going through, life was hard for me. Lots of stress in life, lots of, with having a family and work and church responsibilities, just stressed really greatly, a lot of stress. And so when you find out, like for me, there was more first vision stories or how it came to be, which doesn't jive with the church's story, it like struck me like, what? And so you're kind of shocked. And so you're like, I'm believing, so I'm going to dig deeper and figure this out, resolve my concerns.
Yep.
And then when that happens is you're going down a rabbit hole, as we say. You think you resolve one thing, but you find another and another issue. And so like you're just neck deep in just mess of things that are true, but you were never taught as a member.
So what's going through your head at this time? Like the further you go into that rabbit hole.
Well, the context is like, I've been a member my entire life.
Yep.
And I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this. And like, it has to be true. Like, it better be true. Mm-hmm. And like, you're learning these things, and like, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, dude, is it really true? Like you're like questioning and doubting like crazy. Your mind's going in overdrive. So like it was crazy. And like I didn't tell my wife. I was scared to tell her.
Okay.
Because like when you're a member and if a spouse leaves, that can break apart your family, because traditionally in some cases a wife or a spouse, one spouse is loyal and they'll leave you. And then there's the dynamic where in order to get to heaven, you have to be there with your spouse that you're sealed to in the temple. So it's all interrelated and just a complicated web of like requirements and work. And when you lose your testimony and you have this integrity within yourself, like I can't be a part of something that isn't true, you fall apart, like emotionally. That's what happened to me.
How long is this period lasting for? When you start going into the rabbit hole, you're thinking to yourself, things don't add up exactly. You're going deeper, you're having this stress and this pressure of everything that you've ever thought in the teachings, now you're not believing.
So I think this started for me in like 2015.
Okay.
The doubts. And a culminating moment for me was, again, the foundation of my testimony was in the reality of this church. I'm a part of this church because it is true that these things happened. That Joseph Smith is and was a prophet of God. The Book of Mormon is the Word of God. So in 2016, with my employer, I went on a business trip to Ohio. A town called Kirtland, Ohio is a famous church history site. That's where the very first Mormon temple was built. There is the story where God the Father and Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph and his close associate Oliver Cowdery, and they, in a sense, had their prayers answered and confirmed. So I thought, since Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery received a physical manifestation of God the Father and Jesus Christ appearing to them in this temple, I, at least in 2016, was praying for and hoping for like a spiritual manifestation, something that would tell my soul that all that I've come to believe as a young boy till then is true. I wanted to get my testimony back, and where better place than the Kirtland Temple, the very first temple in the modern dispensation. And I didn't get anything. No confirmation whatsoever. So, but that's the thing, is like, that's what you're trained to do. You pray for answers, and the Spirit will tell you.
Okay.
And I didn't get it. At the same time, like, I'm doing all these things, and I tell my wife, Sarah, that I'm just gonna go to church history sites, it'll be fun. I'm here in Ohio, I can't not do this.
Okay.
But I'm just like reeling inside, like, this is why I'm going. Fast forward to 2019, we move into a new ward. Basically in that ward, an older man, he was alleged to be a sexual predator. It was on the news, and it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, for me. I felt at that point I can come true to my wife of my concerns about the truthfulness of the church, but also these problematic issues of what's happening right then in 2019. We witnessed firsthand how the church at a local level tried to sweep this under the rug. And the idea where if this really happened back in the early 80s of this event, how come as members we were never told this? How come does this man have callings in the ward where he was on a small period of time was teaching Sunday school to 12 to 14-year-olds, which my son was in that class at least once, because he was like a substitute teacher, if you will, for a Sunday. That was the cascading event where Sarah and I came together. She knew my concerns. I shared those concerns. She researched, and we as a couple decided to speak out about what was happening. That was totally not acceptable of the behavior of the church. And our local leaders, I feel, were just doing what the top leaders in church headquarters were having them to do. Just cover up, not talk about, have it quietly disappear like it never happened. As a member of the church, you do not speak badly against the church. My wife and I, Sarah, were outspoken. We even were part of a initiative called Thrive, where we invited people who were going through some troubles with the church, like faith crises and so forth. Mm-hmm. And we would have monthly meetings at our house just to offer love and support. Our local leader, I think in his mind, had enough, where he threatened excommunication, because in his mind, it's his responsibility to defend the church. And what we were doing was speaking bad against the church. Excommunication is a very barbaric ritual where you basically, like, you're going to court in real life, and you go to like this boardroom type room where 15 men sit in front of you, and it's just a barbaric and ugly practice. So instead of that, we as a family decided to take our power back and resign. And with all this, I quickly realized that, in my opinion, there is bigger issues within the church. There's harm against young people, people who identify as LGBTQ. There's just allegations and issues of sexual assault that are happening in the church. So the church is not a safe place, unfortunately.
Can I throw something out there? And I want you to get your thoughts on this one. Whenever you put millions of humans together, you're going to get the sexual predator, you're going to get the anti-LGBTQ, you're going to get all types. How is it different than humanity out of the church in that sense?
I would say, because the church claims to be the one true church on the earth and who is led by God, this is God's church, led by a prophet who we're taught that will not lead his people astray, we're taught that local leaders are called of God. God oversees everything within his church. So the question you got to ask yourself is, if these things are happening under God's watch, and in some cases, these allegations are behind closed doors of bishops or other church leaders, how many times should that happen in God's true church? The answer is 0. It should happen 0 times, but that's not the case. Again, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, by their own admission, has set the bar to the highest. They are the one and only true church. And in my view, a loving God who oversees this close would never allow such harm upon some of his children, because we're all God's children. I could no longer walk away. I could no longer look away, and I can't be a part of the organization. Okay,
most Mormons don't believe in any of that stuff, obviously. Being sexual predators, breaking the law. That's the problem with some of these stories, right? Everything can get lumped up into one person or one group.
True.
Like, is your beef is the fact that the hierarchy is willing to cover things?
Yeah, my beef is the top leadership. It's not your local member. And the local leaders are in essence trained, taught, and conditioned to do the bidding of the top leadership in Salt Lake.
So you think the top leadership now is fundamentally corrupt, or
yes,
they've gone off the rails a bit, or?
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, it's their financial decisions, the way that they cover up the bad things that happen, because in their view, what's paramount is to protect the image of the church. that's the most important thing. So they will sweep away and hush the bad things that are continuing to occur in the church.
Is it fair to say, like, if I'm going to make a comparison with that, any big institution, organization, usually has a hard time apologizing? An example would be the U.S. government, right? Most people would think our invasion of Iraq was probably a bad idea. And our administration, any of our leaders have never apologized for that to anyone. They said, hey, we got this wrong. We led you guys into something we shouldn't have gone into. Is there that at play in the church? I mean, I'm just trying to, I've never been in it. I've never been under this hierarchy, so I'm not familiar with it. Is that a way to compare it?
I would just say that, I mean, for example, Dallin H. Oaks, who's a part of the First Presidency, he was on record saying years ago that as a practice, the church does not apologize. And it's, in my view, hypocritical, because on one hand, you're teaching members to, when you do wrong, you forsake your sin, you repent, you make restitution, you strive to do better, and you admit your problems and grow from it. But we're not, you can argue that you're not seeing it from the top leadership. Mistakes are made, but they never take ownership of it. The church does a great job of telling members what resources to use for material, for learning, like the church history aspect. They do a good job to sanitize or whitewash the ugly parts of it in the handbooks. And we're also warned that we need as members to stick to the material that we produce, that the material that we don't produce is anti-Mormon, and stay away from it, that it's dangerous. That's why a lot of members are just insulated. They don't realize all the things that we've been talking about here, even with like today's issues of what's going on.
Okay, but in every big religion, there have been all sorts of scandals. Wars have been fought over religion. There's been all these wrongdoings, but many people in the religion, oh yeah, let's check that out. You know, there's the faith is good for them. It's that community. It's the sharing of should be decent values like the 10 Commandments, right? Like,
that's the paradox. I agree that for many members, it provides peace and comfort. They love the roadmap. They love the built-in community that it offers.
Right.
They love the assurity of what's going to happen. They love that. And I think some members feel that if that's taken away from them, it won't be a very pleasant life without it.
And is it? You know.
I realize that it is. Now, like every human, you have your good days and your bad. And it's not roses and daffodils every day. But it's a freeing thing to know that now looking from the outside in, because again, I used to be that person, I can't emphasize that enough, that I come closer to like nature. This is like my God, if you will. I love humanity more and more. I love people who walk a different path than me, who in my previous life, I didn't learn about or see. And it's nice, financially not to pay 10% because it's, the economy sucks right now, and taking 10% of your gross is a lot for a lot of families.
For those that don't know, the 10% tithing. Every member must pay. You make $100,000, you need to pay 10, or is it after you pay your federal state income tax, then you pay 10?
Well, I was raised that you pay on your gross.
Okay.
It's kind of, I kind of believe like the more you pay, my argument is if you're a millionaire and you pay 10%, $100,000, that doesn't hurt. When you're a family of 6 and your income is $40,000 and you pay 10%, that really hurts. Really hurts. Rent, food, clothing, basic medical needs. You know how much money the church is garnering right now. Again, no one knows for sure because they don't share, but it's north of $100 billion.
In some investment fund or something?
Yeah, it's called Ensign Peak Advisors, and it's the investment arm of the church. And my understanding is because the church is nonprofit, they don't pay taxes on their gains, and it's just the unbelievable return on investment that one can get.
And that's just for future temples and whatever else the church needs to spend money on?
I think the church's argument is, these are rough numbers, I believe the estimates are somewhere around $7 billion that the church gains each year from tithing. Their liabilities or obligations is about $6 billion, so that difference of $1 billion goes into this fund, and that's how that money grows. And the church hires the very best of investment bankers to make that money grow.
Okay.
So.
But those numbers you don't know to be exact.
No one really knows.
Nobody really knows.
It's like people who dissect the SEC filings and other public information try to connect the dots. It'd be nice if the church was transparent and told its members.
Yeah. Because
they, again, are sacrificing so much. And if there's nothing to hide, why not share? The church has a big emphasis in the continent of Africa, and I think it's a good proposition for many of those people. The church is incredibly wealthy, and although the church teaches the law of tithing to these people, which is an incredible sacrifice, the church also provides food, clean water, I believe education in a sense. I can see how there can be a good amount of conversion to the LDS faith.
So that goes against the narrative that many people have of the church being racist, right? Trying to stay this white, pure blood, blonde-haired, John Smith type religion. Like they're taking in everyone. I mean, is that fair to say?
The history is interesting. And when Joseph Smith founded the church, there were black members of the church, black members who, for example, received the priesthood.
Okay.
A famous black member is by the name of Elijah Abel. Joseph Smith dies. Brigham and his followers go to Utah, establish a church there. And I believe in 1852, this is my opinion, Brigham Young had different ideas. That's when the racism started, where that's when the priesthood restriction and the temple restriction started for the church. People of color, black skin specifically, could not get the saving ordinances of the temple necessary to go to heaven. But in 1978, the church lifted that ban.
Okay.
So it was, what's the math on that, 126 years of restriction.
But in 2023, it's open on that front, right? Or no?
It is, but I'll say this. Missionaries' goal today, and always has been, when they preach the gospel, they're not saying, join our church, it's good. We got great structure for families, and you'll have good associations with your neighbor. What missionaries are saying is, join this church because it is the only true church on the land. God speaks to prophets. All other Christian churches are wrong. We, the Mormon Church, have the full gospel. And if that's the case, why was there a priesthood ban to begin with? Out of necessity, the church changed. The church should be at the forefront of change in society, not always decades behind. An example is, in the United States, the Civil Rights Movement was in the 60s. The Civil Rights Act was passed into law in 1964. Why is it that the church, about 2 decades later, finally changed? they should be ahead of the curve. And there's argument that there's people on this land, the whole world for that matter, who never had a racist bone in their body and would promote and push for equality for all members of the church. But for some reason, the church for 126 years held that line of Brigham Young.
Cool place, Todd.
My understanding is there was a family that lived here 50, 60, 70 years ago. It was all farm. And so they converted their farmhouse, their house, into a restaurant. And over here are fields where they grow as much as they can and use it for the restaurant.
Oh, awesome.
The things that they can't produce, they use local growers, even for all the meat, beef, poultry, etc.
What a cool place. Look at this tree here. It must be hundreds of years old. How about with the families, like your parents or your wife's parents? Was that a challenge?
It's been a challenge. My family's, for the most part, has been great. It was a learning curve for them at first, but today we're in a good place for the most part. Sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable. Usually family gatherings are centered around the church or church events.
Okay.
Like Easter celebrations or Christmas celebrations. It becomes a little bit of a challenge because of the messages that are often shared.
But you're still invited.
Yeah, for sure.
You can sit at the same table?
We have a great relationship with my parents. Their love is not conditional. They love to see us, love to see our kids. My mom. Hi. The Burger Man is already here.
Burger Man. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a meal. Look at that.
I had to document this too, so.
Wow.
Cornbread, some fries.
Ribs, pulled pork, beans. This is just a loaded burger of sorts with Gouda cheese. So you've been lucky in the sense that your parents haven't, kicked you out of the family, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. None of that. Like my parents always ask about our kids, what they're doing. Just heavily great-grandparents just asking all the questions, like making sure everyone is doing good and being loving and caring in every way. But I think there's a little bit of since we're not part of the church, there's just been a disruption in what has always been. Again, the end goal is to live this life to the best you can, complete all the ordinances of the church, and the goal is to get to heaven, to live with Heavenly Father again as a family all together.
So do you think your parents think you won't go to heaven now that you left?
I wonder, but that's the doctrine. We resign from the church, which means all of our covenants we made from baptism to all the temple has been basically null and void.
Do you even believe in heaven now since you left? Or tough to say?
I don't know. I guess my answer is I don't know, and I'm at peace with I don't know. In my experience, when I was a member, you would work so hard your entire life and putting doubts on yourself that you're not doing enough, you're not good enough, you're not doing everything that you can. And so I think there's a little bit of a constant fear that will all of our family be together? Are we all doing all the things that we need to go to heaven? There's a primary song that kids learn, and the lines are, "Teach me all that I must do to live with Him," meaning Father in heaven, someday. So it's in the doing. It's not just I believe. It's in the doing. And I think with a lot of members, there's stress and worry that I'm not doing enough. They are too hard on themselves, and they always kind of self-doubt and beat themselves up sometimes. I slipped, I did this or I did that, and your whole life you're just working super hard. So on my mission, for example, a mission for boys or men is 24 months or 2 years. I extended 1 month on my own because I felt maybe if I did that, that would be pleasing to God. because I put self-doubt, like I didn't work as hard as I could have been, like on a daily basis, like when you retire to your apartment, like you fall asleep when your head hits the pillow within 2 seconds, that kind of like effort, you know what I mean?
Delicious burger.
Glad you like it.
Excellent. Yeah. So when you left, was there like, were you scared? Were you scared of anybody, for example?
Yes, like Sarah and I did a podcast, and I grew up like, you do not say anything negative towards the church. Mm-hmm. You do not. You don't speak out against it. You don't do anything against it. You don't. So like the first time in my life, in a big way, we did that, Sarah and I did that podcast back in 2019, I think it was.
Okay.
We got home from it. I'm like literally looking through my blinds, you know, are they, now I'm being kind of crazy, but this, like, I thought like the ward members around me would be very upset.
Is there a vacuum that needed to be filled? Because in my research for this story, I've noticed some people seem to be doing pretty well. Others, there was such a structure, there was something so meaningful that they don't have something to fill the void with. Or they've even like gone as far to the other end of the spectrum as possible, finding a purpose or something to stand behind in politics or something else. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's like, how do you take something out that was like almost like an operating system if you don't have anything to replace it with? How do you cope? How do you deal with that?
I would agree. So for me, it was a devastating loss, and it made you rethink everything in life. Because again, the church provided a complete roadmap from start to finish. And so for me, I didn't have answers overnight. And it's still a journey for me and my family.
Okay.
Now, I'm full of hope, and we are, I think for us, we're constantly learning to be even more compassionate, more loving, and more open to other people's point of view and their experiences.
Okay.
My wife is studying to be a family and marriage therapist. She wants to give back.
Great.
In the short term of things, I'm helping special needs kids going to taking them to school, and I find that super rewarding.
That's awesome.
You know, so.
So you're finding purpose through other missions that help people out, or you and your wife are both doing that?
I think joy is found more than ever in like helping humanity, being a human, and love unconditionally.
Yeah.
Without an agenda, without the. In the back of your mind, you're trying to like share something or convert them to something. Because at this point, I don't know the answers of life, and I'm at peace with that. There's 17 million members of the church, and there's, I think, 8 billion people on the earth. And so if you do the division, the mathematics on that, I think it's like 0.002% of the world's population is Mormon or LDS. The basis of the church is they're sharing what's called the plan of salvation, where God created this plan before the world was, so that people can go through these steps to become like Him. Mm-hmm. And it's just, the thought came to me one day, I'm like, wow, at this point the church has been in existence for 250 plus years, and the early leaders of the church would state that on one hand, Christ's coming is near, and on the other hand, they would say, we're going to fill the earth with the gospel. But then I think, wow, only 0.002% of the world's population identifies as LDS. That's not a very good ratio, you know? It's very low.
You got some missionary work to do.
It's just, or God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and if, let's say, Christ came on the earth today, only a small fraction of His people, like, would be worthy or good enough to return to His presence. So, like, that's kind of a crappy plan, you know what I mean?
So, in the Mormon world, what would happen to me?
Well,
how would they view me?
So, in the Mormon world, you're going to go to the spirit world, and there'll be missionaries there. So you have a chance there to learn the gospel. And
as a current non-believer,
yeah.
I die, I have a chance
Right.
Okay.
Now, the fact that you're doing this documentary and the fact that you're talking to me and the others, like, you're on kind of loose ground already because you've been telling all this stuff and you're choosing not to become a member. And let's say you don't become a member and you die. But in the spirit world, you'll be given another chance to accept the gospel, become baptized, do all the things.
So if I don't do it there, then what happens? I go to hell?
Then Judgment Day will come, and you'll be sent to 4 different kingdoms. Outer darkness, which is for the super bad people, murderers, those who, do you deny the Holy Ghost?
Okay.
I'm a little rusty. Then and that's for the super bad people. Really bad, that's where Satan dwells, I think. And then there's 3 kingdoms of glory. There's celestial is the top, telestial, and then terrestrial kingdom. And so the judgment bar of God will determine which of those kingdoms you go to. The goal is celestial because that's where you become God and you'll be dwell with God. The other 2, I think God visits, but what's troublesome is maybe some of your family is going to be in the celestial and you won't see them. So there's some motivation to do all you can to get to the celestial.
And in the original teachings, now not the LDS Church now, they've changed, but the fundamentalists believe to get to the celestial, you need 3 wives.
Oh, good point. So the founding fathers of the church, the prophets and apostles, Brigham Young, for example, they taught that in order to get to the celestial kingdom, you must enter into plural marriage.
Yeah.
Now, the number of wives, I'm not sure, but it's more than 1.
But that's changed, to be clear on the record.
So the history is
It's changed.
the U.S. government almost brought the church to their knees for practicing it, and so I think the 3rd prophet put the kibosh on it. They stopped it completely.
Yeah.
But another interesting fact is polygamy technically still occurs in the Mormon church today.
Brand new.
And dun dun dun, right? So let's say, and this is the privilege of a man. So let's say I'm a member of the church. And I'm fully a member. My wife dies. It's sad, and we were still together. Okay. I have the opportunity to marry another woman and be sealed in the temple to her, so that if we all live faithfully, we will live forever in the celestial kingdom, and I'll have 2 wives.
Okay.
Or more, technically, if that second one dies.
Okay.
So President Nelson and President Oaks all are on I think their first spouse passed away, and they're sealed to their second wife. So technically, in a spiritual sense, and many others are practicing polygamy.
So in the afterlife, they'll have a plural marriage.
Right. Now, there's lots of problems with this, but one of them that screams out at me, let's say for me, my wife, we're still in the church, she dies. She won't have any say on me marrying another until it's already done.
Okay.
And it won't be until the afterlife. So I think a lot of this is within the teachings of the church, there's no say with women on what happens. They don't have autonomy. They don't have any choice in a lot of different things. And that's one of them. All real decisions are made by men. The First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12. Down to the local level, sure, we have organizations where the children's organization, the leadership are women.
Okay.
And then there's an organization for young women, so there's leadership there. And then for adult women, there's another organization, there's leadership there. But true decisions in terms of the church are made by men, and just certain callings like being a secretary for the bishop, or a financial clerk for the bishop, or a membership clerk for the bishop, by design are priesthood callings, and priesthoods are only held by men. Help with the collection of tithing money and some of the local expenses.
Okay.
Under the supervision and direction of the bishop. Women can't do any of that. But looking back, it's silly, because what if, I'm sure there's well-qualified women who are accountants by trade, who can do a phenomenal job, but because...
So they're not allowed to do that
at
all? Is that nationwide or just in...
Nationwide.
Okay. When you were in the church, and you heard of someone leaving or knew of someone leaving, what did you think about them?
I would be guilty of not like trying to understand on a personal level, in a truly empathetic level, their journey.
You wouldn't think, oh, that's a loser, just a non-believer, they've gone off the rails.
I would think internally I would have like pity. Common saying is they're not holding on to the rod, the iron rod where you helps you stay righteous and close to God.
Okay.
You're not on the path to righteousness. I don't think I would overtly say things, but I think I would be guilty of maybe thinking it, because this is kind of how we were wired. Again, those negative messages from leaders, like they're lazy, they must have been offended, you know, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
what would you want, if there was one thing you would want people of the church to know, or like one main point you'd like to bring out?
I would say, if someone that you love, family or friend, decides to leave the church, go have a honest conversation with them and ask them in a sincere way, like, what led you to leave? And out of love and concern, ask that question, because I think oftentimes, and I've spoken to many people about this, is they feel deserted. I think members are conditioned, unfortunately, again, by top leadership, that we're dangerous. We can't be trusted anymore. There's just constant messages like that teach members to be nice, but stay your distance, you know? And we're just like you. We're just like you at one point, and nothing has changed in that regard.
And you don't look down on them for still believing?
No, I mean, for many, I understand why. I think for many, and I understand it, that the cost is too great for some of them to leave.
But many in it still, like a lot, I've met with a lot of Mormons the last few weeks. Some great people. Like, I met some great people. And you never know what's going on inside someone's head.
Yeah.
But there's different degrees to it too. Like, you know, I'm technically Protestant. That's how I was grown up. Now I don't practice, so I can be called Protestant, but I don't partake so much. I've met some Mormons that are like really putting a lot of time in every day. I also met some that are like, yeah, it's my belief. But they're not, I wouldn't say like, you know, to the grindstone with it. Mm-hmm. And I see how it's a great mold for many people. This is my outside.
Sure.
Do I want to be part of it? No. Do I want to be part of any organized religion? No. It's not my jam. So it's not going to work. No one's going to sell it to me. But I try to respect everyone and not judge at all, and not think my ways are right and their ways are wrong. So, I mean, isn't it fair to say, like, some people, though you've read the truth, in your opinion, the truth, they just need to find that, but maybe they're happy in the world they're in, and the world they're in is the best place for them to be.
That's a fair point, and I understand that. And I'm not here, and many of people who live are not here to pull people away.
Okay.
I'm about, like for the church, for example, especially for new converts, to be transparent. Tell the good, the bad, the ugly. Everything from the church history and to what you're doing today, and don't hide behind it, and don't try to cover it. And then once the individual knows all of it, all the information, then you can decide.
Okay.
I mean, I believe in transparency and informed consent. That's a big one, because I strongly believe that it's not there. It hasn't been, and it's still not there today. Every person, because again, look at my life. You will devote everything to the church. Your time, your talents, and your money, everything to the church for your whole life. So that individual deserves to know everything. The church needs to be transparent, and the individual is entitled to or deserves informed consent to decide.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Todd, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Not easy to tell that story, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's challenging, it's tough, but it's a story that needs to be told. The hope is just to have mutual understanding for the members that stay, for the members who leave.
Okay,
So-
great. No, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Give you a handshake here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And guys, this is part of a greater LDS Mormon series. I have 3 other videos of people in the religion that seem to love it. 2 stories about fundamentalism, which is totally different than LDS, but I wanted to show that difference. And you, someone that's left, and I felt that was an important component to this series.
Thank you. Well, thanks for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
No,
It was fun.
thank you. Awesome. Until the next one, guys.